hope you could come out and enjoy the push for the census. All right.
So thank you folks for coming. We're just waiting for everybody to come in. So, Representative, you've had a few busy days.
Yeah, Abraham's now going to talk.
Yep. So we're officially live on Facebook, so we're all good to get started. Thanks so much for attending another event hosted by the medical cannabis community, where we'll be catching up with Illinois State Representative Shawn K. Ford to get a better understanding on what is happening in Illinois social equity and the latest announcements that have been made by the Pritzker administration. So all that said, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Mark Pesikovich, who will lead us in this conversation with Representative Shawn. Off to you, Mark.
Dear Abraham, good to see you, Representative Ford. How's everything?
Very good, Mark. Thank you.
So it's been a busy few days.
It's been busy. It's been productive. It's been just what we sign up for, and when we do our jobs. You know, you've been a advocate and a lobbyist, and Abraham being an advocate and a social media expert. I think that we could be happy with the engagement that we've had over the past few weeks.
Hey, and it's like the United Nations. We have an African American, a Mexican American, and a Caucasian, and you know, a diverse team getting the job done.
Yeah, you know, I have to say that I'm very happy that I had a great partner in the Black caucus and the Latino caucus, and of course, Representative Willis. We've been working with the administration to get some changes to the outcomes of the previous announcement by the governor's administration.
So catch us up from, you know, I guess first of all, I will start by just letting you know that there are people celebrating, literally celebrating. For some of the people who are involved in this issue, this is the first time they've encountered politics. This takes them way out of their comfort zone. And as you know, Illinois has a well-deserved reputation for the little guy not always being heard. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of hundreds and thousands of people who've been following us here for helping the little guy be heard, being the champion. Certainly Leader Willis deserves a lot of credit along the way. Representative Hernandez and Senator Castro joined us as well, and hopefully there will be a growing list of legislators all working together. But before we even get into that, you know, I thanked you. I didn't necessarily say what I was thanking you for. So in your own words, sort of give us a synopsis of the developments over the last 24 to 48 hours.
Well, the developments were a response to the people of Illinois saying that they felt that the current process of the way the lottery candidates were announced, they felt that the people that were chosen to be in the lottery, that the process at which got them there was sort of corrupted, sort of unfair and far from equitable. And so, you know, the good thing is we saw democracy work here, and we saw a governor that responded to the people. You know, he very well could have just ignored the advocacy work of the groups out here and the legislators that were trying to warn him of some pitfalls that were right before him. So we saw with previous governors, it did not matter with previous governors consequences that he would have encountered if he stayed on a course. We saw lots of lawsuits with the previous administration, Ronner, when the state got shut down and people were suing the state for their money. Even Ronner's wife sued the state for money for childcare. And so we are lucky to have Governor J.B. Pritzker that recognized that there was a problem in the implementation of the cannabis licenses. People didn't sit back. They did what they were supposed to do. They called their legislators, they called the governor's office, they filed lawsuits, and that's what you're supposed to do. You get out and you advocate and you make sure that you come together and fight for what you believe in and fight for the money that you spent in applying for these licenses. And that's what people did. People spent millions of dollars for a chance to win a social equity application place in the lottery. And today, the governor, or yesterday, the governor announced that he heard the people when they say that their deficiency notices were never sent to them. And they never had a chance to cure their deficiencies because they never got the notices. And it appears that they only got their scorecards, which eliminated them from the lottery. That wasn't fair, that wasn't just, and that wasn't equitable. So we went out, everyone went out, and they said that we need to make sure that if Illinois is going to implement cannabis, legal cannabis, recreational cannabis, that we should lead the nation and do it fairly. And the governor heard that. And he announced yesterday that the people that were left out of the process of being able to have their deficiencies mailed to them and 10 days, according to the law, to cure their deficiencies will now have the opportunity to do so, which will then increase the number of people that will be in the lottery to win, to have a chance to win the one of the 21 social equity licenses. So that's great. That's what we wanted. We learned through this process that people are okay with not winning the lottery this round, but they want a fair shot at winning it. You know, and that's what people are fighting for. They recognize that it could be difficult, but they do recognize that they want a chance because they spent their hard-earned money and their time and their efforts to try to get in that lottery. And so I think we're going to allow, the state has announced that they're going to allow that process according to the law to take place. And because of that, that's why I say I think that the governor is pretty wise to listen to the cries and the outpour of concern by the people, because one of the federal lawsuits was dropped as a result of the governor making that announcement. And that was something that we talked about on this show, that the plaintiff said that if he could if the governor could meet the demands, that he would drop his lawsuits. Because what we wanted, Kathleen Willis and myself, what we wanted, nothing more than to, one, not have the state pay to defend a lawsuit. That's taxpayer money when it could be avoided. And more importantly, we wanted to make sure that applicants that spent their money to apply because they believed in a system, we didn't want them to have to spend money to fight a lawsuit. That was achieved yesterday as of now for some applicants. There will be more lawsuits probably, but I do believe that the governor has the ability to reconcile and try to fix and avoid any further lawsuits that stand a chance of winning in the courts. Anyone could sue for anything, and that will happen. But we have to make sure that we do everything that we can to eliminate lawsuits that are going to have a chance of holding this process up in court.
Well, every lawsuit dropped is a savings to the taxpayers of the state of Illinois. So being one, I thank you for your diplomacy on that. In terms of in terms of next steps, do we have a sense of timing on this? Has the governor communicated any more details to sort of the legislators than he revealed publicly today in the news conference?
Yeah, you know, through messages from the governor believes that this could all be wrapped up, and all being everyone that should have their deficiencies and to have 10 days to cure their deficiencies and receive the highest and best score for their deficiencies after they're cured. The message is that this could be done before fall is over. And that's excellent. The other thing that's going to be, that's a win for people, people believe that they were given their deficiencies early on and they were given 10 days to cure their deficiency, but they were never awarded the credit for their deficiencies. That is also a win. Everyone that didn't win the lottery will now, again, receive their deficiencies and they will have 10 days. So those people that feel that their deficiencies were not, that they didn't receive credit for their deficiencies after they cured them, they will have a chance to do that. And if they have trouble with that, they can always call us.
So I know to some extent it's speculation, but there's still a lot of sort of bleeding happening on the side of the other applications, you know, like the craft grow and infusion, because people actually have had to have property locked down for that. And so as you've heard these things many times, so I don't have to, you know, get into it, but what do you, you know, if even if just speculation, what do you think is going to happen with those applications, since we thought the state had finished scoring them? Now they might be going to take another look. And I'm wondering if somebody's going to take another look, should it be the same people who did the original work? And how, you know, what do you think this bodes for craft grow and other future applications that are already in waiting?
Yeah, I think that the governor now has a fine, I think the governor now has a better sense. Hindsight is always 2020. He now realizes that, you know, he's got to make sure his Department of Professional Regulators are monitoring this very closely. And I think the fact that we get off to a bumpy start at the beginning for the 75 licenses, we now know that there is um, a finer, I think that the department and the governor and his team, they're looking at this very closely, and they're going to make sure that when they make that announcement about the craft grows, that they've done their homework. You know, the governor believed in KPMG. There's no doubt he believed that they could get the scores right. And he believed that the process was right. If he didn't believe in it, I do believe he would have done something differently.
Before we go further, if you don't mind me interrupting, would you mind putting your phone on silent? The
I don't.
dings.
It's on silent. I don't know how. Yeah, this is. Yeah.
Oh no! All right, let's
I
continue.
know it's killing us. Let's see what happens. I turned it off. Let's see what that does.
Mine's on silent as well, so we'll see. But sorry to everyone watching for the dings and the beeps. It's still really important information. So I guess this is to say we think that there'll be tighter internal controls. Do you know? Do you have a sense of sort of what part of the look back and the application process IDFPR is going to now do in-house versus what they're still going to delegate to KPMG? And assuming, you know, let me take a wild guess, those details haven't reached you yet. The bigger question that everybody is asking is, will there be more transparency from now on, or are we still sort of dealing with the black hole of government?
Yeah, I think that we should always fear that there will be some. We should always fear that fairness is in jeopardy, and so we have to be careful and make sure that people that have invested their money let the government know that they're watching and that they will not accept anything less than fair. I do believe that that we've learned from this process, and I do believe that um, there will be tighter regulations. And what we have now is we're gonna. I think that if we go strictly by the law, people invested in the law that they knew, and I think that they would be fine with the law that they knew, regardless to the outcome, as long as the law that they knew is being followed. But you can't have a government duping applicants. That's not fair at all.
Well, and I think, again, maybe I don't need to belabor the point, but was really, what was really, it's like, it's not the applicants who screwed up, it's the government that screwed up, like the applicants don't need a do-over, the state needs a do-right. And I think you got us to that point. So, assuming that things are now going to move with, some greater degree of smoothness going forward in the current, in the process of the current licenses that have already been applied for, what are your conversations with other legislators? What are your plans in terms of veto session? And by the way, I guess to some extent it might be sort of internal baseball, but I know I spent some time in Springfield also, so I wanted to know what your sense is of whether you know yet what the veto session is going to look like. Is it going to be traditional veto session with the lobbyists around the rail, legislators in the chambers, or is it going to be more like the abridged spring session? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so we already know that the session will be a COVID session. So the protections will be in place, and there will be there probably would be no rail action taking place during veto, because there's still going to be this virus that's out there that we have to protect one another from. So we probably won't have that. You probably see something like you saw in the first veto, and that's where we're probably going to be. There will be a lot of action going on in veto session. Of course, there's going to be trailer bills for this cannabis law, because now the governor now sees some flaws in it, and he sees that we have to make sure that whether the law has major flaws, it definitely has loopholes that we have to tighten up. That's important, to make sure that these loopholes that allow for um, individuals to um, avoid real true social equity, that has to change. And we can't allow people that have millions of dollars, as we saw there are people with billions of dollars engaged in this process. And when you have that type of money, it's hard to beat them. And we can't allow that. If we want to lead the nation in true social equity, then we're going to make sure that people that work a 9 to 5 have an opportunity to open up a cannabis dispensary on the west side of Chicago, where they live and where they raise their families, and also where they're going to hire people from that neighborhood and also develop it. You're muted.
Thank you. You see, you needed to be in charge of that also. I guess first let me just acknowledge we have a lot of really cool influencers watching us live. We've got Malcolm, we've got Edie Moore, we've got Kiana Hughes, a number of folks whose voices have played a really influential role in getting us to this point. I think everybody had different kinds of input with sort of different varying degrees of volume. But talk a little bit about sort of the role that the community played in this and should play in it going forward. I mean, like, because a lot of people are reaching out to us saying, what should we do? We feel like we won. I kind of like this public square thing. How can people engage going forward?
First of all, it's political science, it's civics, and it's engagement. And what I think we've learned most and what we won in this is a response from government that favors our demand. That's huge. To get a response from government that reflects our demand 100%. And so what we have to do is do everything that we can to continue the pressure to show that we believe in true social equity. And Black people, brown people, whoever believes in true social equity need to be talking about this every day. Need to be talking about this on Facebook, on your own pages, talking to and sending letters to the legislators, sending letters to the governor's office, talking about true social equity. And if you have ideas of how to make social equity more, how we're able to realize social equity better, send it. This is a democracy. And what we saw messages from people, and that's how we were able to participate in getting the governor where he was at to answer the call of the people. It's exactly what it was. I mean, the press was all over this. I mean, Sam was just great. And I know you, Abraham, you and Mark, you guys know Sam and Bob, they were great. You guys know those names, and I'll just thank them too, because they were all over it.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on a couple of sort of hot button issues that a lot of people have raised, and I'm sure you've heard. And, I don't know how much you have to say about it at this point, because I still think you're soliciting feedback and listening to others. But one of the hot button issues was veterans. And I sort of wanted to clarify where I thought we were and tell me if I'm sort of reading this right. As far as the current applications, the applications that will be rescored now, there is nothing really that can be done about the veterans thing because that's clearly in law. So what the governor is doing now with the rescoring is essentially engaging almost in rulemaking, right? He's taking administrative action, executive action, but to somehow change the veterans' preference would actually need to be done legislatively and can't be done retroactively. So number one, is that your understanding that if you did not get veterans points, it is what it is?
That's exactly right. And the law allowed you, and the process allowed everyone to get a qualified veteran to be a part owner. And everyone had that chance. So that's absolutely right. The person that will not have a qualified veteran will not be able to get those points. But and that can happen because the law has that in it. Now, moving forward with the next group of licenses, that could be removed or amended in some way.
Yeah, I think obviously what everybody is most concerned about is when I think I've talked about it before. I'm obviously consultant on applications as well. And, we call that a unicorn, an Illinois resident who is 51% owner, who's also a veteran and social equity eligible. That's hard to get. And certainly I congratulate all the companies that do have that. And I think there are probably other companies that might have a chance to show that they do too. They just didn't get the credit for it previously. Going forward, though, on the one hand, it's hard to imagine how anybody could argue that veterans should not get a special thank you from the people who they've served to protect. On the other hand, freedom isn't free. On the other hand, we know that the main intent of cannabis legislation was to address the harms of the war on drugs. Veterans as a class weren't impacted by the war on drugs, although I know many, many, many veterans who came home with PTSD, came home broken, and were very much self-medicating. But that aside, I just think that the veterans inclusion, like, we can't take veterans out in subsequent bills. We can't have this a social equity versus veterans fight. One of the things that I thought is maybe we treat veterans points like we treat labor union points. If you get a labor union agreement, you get 5 points, but labor union doesn't have to be 51% owner of the business, and we just leave 51% to be social equity owned. And every company would actually have to go out and engage with a veteran in a meaningful way that you guys prescribed, just like most companies. Well, we know one thing, no company that did not have a union peace agreement won, right? Because they did not get a complete score. So, maybe I apologize. You're actually really patient with me. When I start talking too much, you sort of just tolerate it. So, but what do you think about the whole veterans points and how to handle it in the future?
Well, we really have to see how the veterans preference really plays out after everyone has the chance to get their scores, get their deficiencies and their scores upgraded. They're veterans right now, they qualify as veterans, and if they get an opportunity, we will see veterans with the chance. And so we have to see how this plays out and see exactly what happens with the veterans preference. Then we'll be able to tell whether or not it's a bad thing. But we shall see. How many veterans are out there right now that did not get in the lottery because of the flawed system? That's what we got to look at. And, Mark, I want to also say, the Showman Group and Corinne, they were just fantastic helping to pull people together, helping us get people to the platform to have a voice to help get the message out. The Showman Group, Dan Showman and Corinne, they were just fantastic. We were a great team here, and I hope we continue it. The scene, they're another excellent group. I mean, them, they were fantastic as well. And there are so many groups that believe in cannabis in Illinois, the business of cannabis. And I think that this exercise that they've gone through is really going to help the state have the best cannabis law in the nation and a model.
So, and actually, one of the things I really want to come back to is how we make sure that groups like SEEN and others are included at the table every step of the way going forward. But before we get there, please remind me if I forget to go there. What are we going to need for? Are people going to need help with their deficiencies? How's all that going to work? Are all different groups going to be, sort of offering resources? I just feel like, I'm a consultant, I make money on this, but even I don't feel like people should have to pay me to correct their deficiency.
Right. You're absolutely right. And, that's a good segue because, I think that people that have already spent thousands of dollars, applying, paying consultants, paying their application fee, some paying attorney fees to fight. They have there are almost no more resources for them. So, I think I'm calling on the big cannabis companies to provide some technical assistance for the social equity applicants. We need the big cannabis company to provide technical assistance for the social equity applicants. And so I really believe that it would be fair for them to come together and help the social equity applicants um, cure their deficiencies. So the big players in the industry and their associations, you know, the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois, you know, let's do my best to reach out to them so that they can provide some assistance to the small lottery dreamers out there. And I think that, you know, I have a good relationship with Pam Altiv. I think you're part of that group, right? Former senator. You're on the mute.
Yeah, I actually serve as senior advisor, so I can certainly facilitate that conversation. But I mean, to some extent, it does certainly make sense that the companies that have the expertise might, you know, take in some time from their security expert or their culture, you know, whatever dispensary operations expert, and all those people can sort of maybe just even have, you know, appointments or something to help people with their deficiencies. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't speak on anyone's behalf, but you know, I can't imagine anybody who's asked to help wouldn't want to jump in and help.
We're gonna announce the schedule for which the big industry players are going to help. So that you'll see that soon, and maybe we'll come back here and talk about the schedule where people will be able to sign up and how they could sign up to get that help from the Cannabis Business Association. And Just Grow is another that's talked about that they wanted to come and possibly help. But there are a few groups that want to help when asked if they would provide some relief for these social equity applicants.
Yeah, uh, I think we're gonna, you know, try to get whatever resources are available to help people cure deficiencies that are available without having people who are already bleeding cash spend more money. You know, I think it's fair to say, hey, hit Abraham up on the medical cannabis community, and maybe we'll have some kind of a list or something. I'm seeing notes that Chicago Normal, uh, uh, the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition, seeing others. I think everybody's going to play some role. Hopefully, there is some overarching effort to organize everybody rather than just sort of everybody nibbling at the edges. But you know, that's just my perspective. So yeah, I think we'll certainly be happy to help reach out to industry and other players. The other sort of hot rail that I wanted to touch on, the other real controversial piece of this, in addition to veterans, is the sort of the third option for eligibility for social equity, or at least it's what I call it, the third option. Just to remind you and everybody, and you already know, but there are three ways to qualify for social equity: through living in a certain designated distressed area for at least 5 out of the last 10 years, or being impacted directly through arrest or conviction by the war on drugs with an offense that could be expunged. So that would be if you're impacted directly by a minor cannabis offense. The third way to qualify is by hiring at least 10 employees and having 51% or more of those employees qualify, I guess under the previous two criteria. So if you hire employees that are social equity and you have 6 out of 10 are social equity and you have 10 full-time employees, you qualify for social equity. On the one hand, I have seen a lot of people say, well, that just opens a door for the rich white guys to hire a bunch of people at low wages for these jobs in order to qualify for social equity. On the other hand, I've talked to a lot of people who are very happy to have these jobs and these wages and see this as a stepping stone to another another opportunity in the industry, whether it's with this company or not. So a lot of companies that have hired people are actually spending time with these people, teaching them stuff while they're just waiting. So I really see it both ways. On the one hand, you shouldn't be able to pay to equate with the pain caused by the war on drugs. On the other hand, you can't tell me that hiring a bunch of folks and paying them full-time wage doesn't help some folks, keep their head above water who've been impacted by the war on drugs. What do you think? What do you think? You're on mute.
Me. So I think what happens when you think about it, it wasn't intended for people to, people were not intended to be, lack of a better term, slaves to the owner. This is intended to give people a real shot at ownership. That's the intent. That's what was sold, not a minimum wage job that you could be fired, that you were used just to get the license to show your token minority. That wasn't what this is about, and the law should not have allowed it, and we have to fix that. And the good thing is the people that have the licenses, they still have to come back for review. And if they're not truly practicing social equity and have those individuals still working or have some form of social equity employees and Black and brown mixed minorities that's hardest hit, they could lose their license. The law does have that in it. There's a mechanism in it for them to lose their license.
Absolutely. That's why, and actually Senior Advisor Hutchison commented to that effect at the news conference with the governor today, because she reminded everyone that these licenses are actually called conditional. The first word in sort of the name of the license is conditional. So you would assume that there are conditions. So your sense is pretty good. Given the opportunity, you would close that third option going forward and focus this, the benefits of this industry more specifically on the actual people who would qualify under option 1 or 2.
Yeah, we have to go with what we have. Yeah, and yeah.
And I don't know the answer to this. I don't know that you do. At what point, is there a point at which we can say, well, rather than just sort of dancing around the issue, X amount of licenses go to minority communities or to Black and brown communities? I mean, I know, we're supposedly supposed to do that with contracting in this state. It doesn't necessarily work as intended, but do you see us sort of just not trying to contort ourselves into the war on drugs thing and just say, let's focus on the communities that it clearly impacted? What's your thinking about that?
Mark, I think we should do that. I think we should take the risk, set some precedents, and just name what we want to happen. The worst thing that could happen is a rich man or rich woman goes to court and say, absolutely not. We don't want them to have it. The only way it's shot down is if someone objects to it. If someone objects to it, the ultimate thing and the intent of the law was social equity. And we could win that. I think this is the moment to set precedent that we can specify in law, that we want to help a certain group of people, whether they're white, Black, brown, gay, straight. Let's say it. This is the government that we have the ability to make more perfect, and we should do that. And we should take the risk of a lawsuit. We don't want to have lawsuits, but that's a good one to go to court over, whether or not we're going to force the law to do what's hard to do because you have billionaires out there that's in the way.
Yeah, I think that'll be very interesting to watch play out. By the way, I want to, it's like how refreshing to have somebody associated with state government actually answering questions that they're asked, rather than dancing around them, putting themselves on the record and sort of expressing their true opinions and giving us some sense of what the priorities are. So thank you for doing that. And
You're talking, but you're muted.
yeah, there are a lot of people online. I wanted to check in with Abraham and see if we wanted to take some questions and comments from people. I see Mr. Parnell just commented, and he's always got great contributions. So Abraham, did you want to interject?
Sure, there's a lot of questions in the Q&A if you want to open that up. Otherwise, I could read them out loud if you like.
No, read them out loud. My wife will tell you I'm not a multitasker.
Awesome. All right. So the first one is coming in is how long do we anticipate that it will take for the state to reissue those deficiency notices and rescore the applications? And based on that, what do you think is the estimate date on when the lottery will take place?
Yeah, all that is very speculative right now. But what the governor is saying that this will happen before the end of fall. So I think that they're gathering all of the information right now, and people should stay tuned and check their emails for those deficiency notices. I think that we do need to get some definitive dates when the first round of deficiency notices will be going out. That's only fair to have an idea when deficiency notices will be hitting people's inboxes, and maybe they should also mail them to an address as well.
And for that clarification, can we explain to people what the deficiency notice is intended to do? Because a lot of people are under the impression that with them getting this deficiency notice, they'll be able to fix their applications and get a perfect score. But what is turning out to be is that if you don't have a veteran on your team during this round, no matter how many changes you make to your application, you won't qualify to get the maximum points that are apparently required to enter the lottery.
That's absolutely right. And so we will see how the governor responds to that. And that's where another lawsuit could come in at, because people, what the key is to make sure that the law is followed. That's where we are at right now. We have the governor doing everything that the Black Caucus, the Latino Caucus, all asked. That happened. He's now moving, and we're going to get the deficiency notices out. The deficiency notices will be cured, and people will have a chance to get rescored. Once we have a sense that the process was done according to the law, then we look at that. And then if we find out that no one qualified because they didn't get veteran points, the question is, will lawsuits come for that? Because people believe that that was not the intent of the law. But one step at a time, the first step is to find out if people didn't score because they didn't have veterans. And the only way to do that is get those deficiency notices out, get them cured, get them scored. And now we have a better look at how this process played out.
Friend Brad Zerman just texted me to remind me their lawsuit is still out there. So as you pointed out before, Representative, there are several lawsuits, and some of them may continue depending on which issues they particularly raise and whether those issues are being addressed. In terms of what a deficiency notice is and what it's intended for, I guess let me take a shot at that. The lawyer that had the main federal lawsuit, John Lovey, I think really had what I found to be a really helpful articulation of what a deficiency note is supposed to do. He posited that deficiency notice was built into the cannabis law as a social equity mechanism. That is, we know that the mom and pops just getting into this are always going to be a little less perfect than the polished everyone's that have done this a million times and mastered the process. And so the deficiency notice was supposed to be an extra step that would help the social equity fairness of the process by giving the mom and pop a heads up that they had missed something and giving them an opportunity to correct it before it counts against them, with the understanding that they now learned why their omission was important. So to him, the deficiency notice was, hey, part of the social equity baked into this law is you get a chance to correct your mistakes so that you can compete with the big guys. Another definition of it, a much more legalistic definition, is you get, there's something wrong with your application. The state or KPMG emails you and says, this is wrong with your application. We need this information. And then you have 10 days to respond and cure it. The problem with the process was that some people who should have gotten credit after they responded to their deficiencies didn't get credit. But in and of itself, the deficiency is just a notice that something was wrong. Part of the problem also is that we don't know for sure which sections were eligible for different people. Seem to have gotten some deficiencies for one thing, other people didn't get them for the same thing. So talk about the deficiency process.
The deficiency process is, there are points that individuals have to earn in order to get to the lottery. It's a 250 score max, I believe. The score max is 250. Is that right, Mark? Yes. And so they have to score two. So, and I guess someone said 252. Is that where the veterans come in at, where you get the extra points for the veterans? Mark?
Mark, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, Rep. I couldn't hear you. You broke up on my end.
Yeah, so the perfect score is 250, but there's a 252. Is that the veterans 2 points?
No. The veterans points, you get 5 points for 51% ownership of the company being a veteran.
Yes, someone said 2 points. What's that?
Right. The 2 points are the extra credit. Essentially, what the department said was if there's a tie in scores, there will be extra credit, 2 points used as an additional opportunity for tiebreaker. So everyone who submitted a good community engagement plan got the 2 points on top of their perfect 250. So 250 plus good community engagement plan equals 252. And it seems that at least currently all the people going into the lottery have the 250.
Right. I don't have the score breakdown on me. That's why I couldn't answer that. I'm glad you have it memorized. But yes, those are the points. So everybody, what did you get? 50 some points for social equity?
Social equity is
51.
20% of the application. So 50 out of 250.
Yeah. So there you have it. That's how it's scored. And then veterans, you say it's 5 points. Yeah. So now you hear there's just a lot of ways to get to that, get to the 250 points. And if you don't have something, if you didn't prove your residency, that you live in a disadvantaged community, then you have a deficiency. If you didn't prove that you have a a person impacted by the war on drugs, then you have a chance to prove it. that the owner is part, or you have someone working for you. So those are deficiency notices. And then there's also a deficiency notice that people are complaining about that they believe should not be, and that is the floor plan and the because the law doesn't force you to have a dispensary location until you win the license, unlike the grow cannabis grow, where you have to have a location and submit plans. Dispensaries you didn't, so people are saying that's not fair. I may not even I may not even be where I said I was be. So why would you ding me for that? The other ones, what do they have to have security plans? Those are points. So there are a lot of different layers to get you to your 250, and that's how I scored. And you have an opportunity to prove that you may have left something out, or there was an incompletion in the process of filling out your application. Then you could cure it.
So, like it's an interesting context. The Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition has had success getting one of the companies to agree to a community benefits agreement, which provides extra on top of what the law dictates for the community. It just occurs to me that maybe the community benefits agreement would be an easy way to come up with a community benefits plan or community engagement plan or whatever it is, giving back to the community. But they are working to get all cannabis companies to sign a community benefits agreement. What do you think, once these companies get licenses, whoever they are, what do you think is expected of them as sort of citizens of the cannabis industry and of our community?
Well, the overwhelming mission, whether you are a social equity applicant or not, or a social equity licensee, overwhelmingly, one, we want to make sure that these businesses are going to be safe, going to make sure that they are ran in the communities that they will be in a safe way, where the people are protected and that they are an asset to the neighborhoods and not something that people regret. Because just like any license, they could be suspended. And we don't want people to invest all the money and their time in partnering with the state to do this, only to lose their licenses. And so we hope that this is an industry that's going to be friendly to the communities, a revenue generating business, and provide people some recreation that they've long wanted.
Thank you. And actually, I guess the Equity Illinois Coalition has two companies that have now agreed to community benefits agreements, and that's a good step, and that's good news. And keep on pushing, guys. And I hope that the CBA can be used as part of a template for a community impact plan for others. Just, that might actually be a little bit of wisdom that I recommend to future clients. Abraham, do we have additional comments, questions, anything else?
We've got lots of them. Some people are mentioning that right now only veterans who are also social equity who own 51% are basically the only exclusive class that are going to be able to participate in this lottery. It's been mentioned that it cannot be changed to allow people to add or change the ownership, and it's been mentioned that in future rounds, they'll be able to allow for a cutoff score to take place, which would essentially resolve the veteran issue in the first place by not requiring a perfect score from those who don't have veteran applicants. Is there a reason why that cutoff score wasn't able to be implemented in this round as opposed to the second?
Mark?
That, being one of the lobbyists who was involved in the conversations, I will say that I think you are seeing now that there were very few people that actually gamed out and anticipate the outcomes that we have seen. So a cutoff score was not something that was really contemplated widely. It now seems to make sense, but it only really makes sense now because within the context of all scores being perfect, they're going to proceed to potentially get a license. So I think that it is something that should be considered. It wasn't in the original law, you know, because people can pick it apart for anything, right? You could criticize it being too strict and not letting enough people in, and you can criticize it for being too lenient and letting so many people in that everybody's chances of getting a license are watered down. So I don't know that there was a particular reason why it wasn't included. I just don't think it was widely contemplated, although, you know, Representative Ford may have been in conversations that I wasn't in, but I think at this point, it's a great thing to try and do.
Yeah, I think that what you hear the governor and the senior advisor Toy Hutchison saying is this is something that got past them, and that they felt that they wanted to issue 75 licenses for the purposes that we're seeing now, to make sure that we didn't have a big release of licenses, so that we could pull back and cure even our deficiencies in the law. And so that's what you're going to find. You're going to find that we're going to cure the deficiencies in our own policy and make sure that it's done right moving forward. But the only way that's going to happen is if people continue to stay engaged. And when they get those deficiencies, we have to talk about it.
And now,
Abraham, I think we're happy to continue. I think we want to make sure we recognize Representative Ford's limitations. So, Rep, if you've got a cutoff time, please let us know. But Abraham, I'll leave it up to you. How many more questions to push this forward?
we've got a couple in the queue, so if you still got a minute, we can answer. Otherwise, we could take the most pressing ones that we see right here. One of the other questions that came in was, is there any intention to remove the lottery process at any point in time? Only because right now the way the program stands is you have to enter for a chance to get a chance to win a potential license, and the sentiments between the social equity community is that a lottery does not promote true social equity.
That was the first time I heard to get rid of the lottery. So that's why these conversations are important. And so we have to figure out what that means and how that looks, and how that would look. So I'm interested in knowing how we can do that and how we could achieve social equity without a lottery.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you know, if it is at all possible that there will be ties, then there needs to be some kind of an ultimate way to resolve who gets a license if two companies score the same. And, you know, I don't know that I have a great answer for that. You know, I think, and see if this makes sense to you guys. I'd be interested in what other people's input is. But to me, like, people say, all right, we'll just give out more licenses because, you know, there are more people eligible, make the system more lenient, just give out more licenses to make the system fairer. Kind of bothers me is that every license out diminishes the value of the previous licenses. So the more licenses, the less they're each worth. They water down the value. So the more licenses you throw out there, the less each particular license is worth. And if your intent at the beginning was to make some people, you know, wealthier, sort of generational wealth, then I don't know that sort of continue to spread licenses around indefinitely is is the way to do it. I mean, I'd be all for an unlimited number of dispensaries. I'm just saying that's not necessarily a good social equity tool too. So, Abraham, like, what do you, honestly, what do you think? Because you've raised this issue a bunch of times, and I think I respect that. How do you handle it?
I think that true social equity applicants don't really care about the value of these licenses if they're blocked out of the opportunity. If the goal is to only make a small number of people wealthy, then that should be the intention that is marketed to the public versus giving the appearance that these programs are supposed to be helping people who have been disadvantaged by the war on drugs, and then turn around and only give licenses to a select few people who right now, as it stands, were able to figure out the game and get a leg up on people who were truly disadvantaged by the war on drugs. And so if a solution is to make it to where more people can get access, I think that would at least improve the chances that regular and true social equity applicants would be able to obtain a chance to get one of these licenses, even if it goes down from a value of 10 million to 5 million to 1 million. That's still $1 million for a true social equity applicant, which is more than they're ever going to see in this current situation where without a veteran right now, they don't even qualify. So most of the 500, 600, 700 people have pretty much just wasted their money in this current round. At least that seems to be the sentiments from the comments that we're getting from our feeds.
And a lot of that is true. I think you said it better than I could. I guess, there's always the perspective of the ones holding the licenses versus the ones who have the licenses, and those would be social equity recipients as well. But again, I think it's a very valid point. People are not satisfied.
Agreed. And so with that end, I got one more question and then we could start wrapping up. One of the other questions that was mentioned is within future trailer bills, is it possible to add a cap on the amount of applications that one could submit and then afterwards potentially win? And if that is the case, then how do you prevent it to where a venture capital company can come in and simply just create all of those different companies and partner with those individual people? Is there something that prevents overlap in applications based on contractors or vendors or people who are connected to those applications?
See, that's a very, very good point to raise. Why is it a point to raise? Because it's critical thinking. And what the governor and everyone is saying pretty much is that one person will not be able to apply for more than. But we have to make sure that we know a person is not a corporation, but there's got to be some way that we look critically at making sure that anyone associated with a corporation as a person cannot apply for more than 10 licenses. That's critical because, like you said, Abraham, people may find a way to get more than 10 in because the governor wants to limit it to 10, I believe he said. But we have to make sure that people don't create these blind trusts and entities that allow them to do it. And there should be some penalties added if we find out that they are submitting in other names. Maybe they could lose their other licenses.
Now, here's another question, and I think this might be our last one if you'd like to close up after. Is it possible to create a social equity committee and then from there a tiered scores for social equity so that it can determine and properly define people who come from wealthy or affluent neighborhoods who were busted for a small amount of cannabis, who now their family members qualify to win some of these social equity licenses versus people who have lived in neighborhoods for longer than 10 to 15 years that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs in neighborhoods that are not being gentrified, or if they are being gentrified, how do you determine that it's not the companies who are gentrifying the neighborhoods who are qualifying for social equity?
Yeah, so I've been on other groups and talked with other groups, and Scene came up with the idea of having one of those committees. And when the question is asked, is it possible? Everything is possible. All you have to do is be willing to fight for it, and bring people along with you. So if you want it, you could get it. And it's just a matter of if you have your thoughts and your ideas and you're willing to fight for them, because a lot of people have ideas and a lot of people have money that they prefer for things to stay the way they are. But come with your ideas and come with your will to fight.
That's sage advice, and I think with that, the last question that makes perfect sense for this is how can people get involved politically in this process so that they're not just standing around the sidelines, jumping through hoops that other people are creating. They need to be at the table in these conversations so that they're creating the hoops that are set at the proper height in which they can actually get through.
Yeah, one thing's for sure: people live here in Illinois, they have access to the people that they elect. They could very well help with the trailer bill and make sure that it's right, because there's always going to be something missing. But the more people we have bringing their ideas and willing to work cooperatively, I think that we could get have a more perfect bill. Never be perfect, and we'll always change and amend the law. We do it all the time. We amend the law to make it better when we learn new things. That's what happens. And that's no different than what happened here. We learned something that wasn't working. The governor responded because of the will of the people, and that's excellent. So we're going to always see flaws in government because it's always striving to be more perfect. I do want to say before we hang up that there is going to be a push to work with the Cannabis Business Association and also Just Grow and a lot of different big corporations or companies to provide technical assistance for social equity applicants. Please email me. Email me and we will make sure that you're connected so that you can get the technical assistance that you need in order to answer the cures of your deficiencies. You shouldn't have to pay. You've already paid once, and you may not have money to keep people on retainer. We have some commitments from some cannabis companies that will provide technical assistance for you. So reach out to this group, reach out to me. Let's get it going and let's get you cured for the lottery.
Thank you, Representative. One kind of one last question in terms of the actual I think people are wondering about the actual process of a trailer bill. So, you know, you have, I don't know, like elves somewhere in the basement of the Capitol cobbling this thing together, sentence by sentence. What happens now? There are a lot of good ideas that are floating around. Obviously, you'll be having conversations with your peers internally about what you want to do. You'll be talking to the administration, but we do have all these groups out here. We do have social equity coalitions of various sorts that have really, really good ideas that should be at the table. Are you going to be convening these groups some more, perhaps you and your peers in the Black and Latino caucuses as you put the bill together?
Yeah, you know, I think that you're going to see legislators all throughout the state holding forums and getting ideas to file bills to make the cannabis law stronger. So pick your legislator that you want to work with and give them your ideas. Give her or him your ideas for how you want to make this policy stronger. How do you want to make this law stronger? I'm available, and just find someone that you believe that you could deliver your message and do it. We have already started, Kathleen Willis and myself, and Elizabeth Hernandez and Lamont Robinson and Sam Yingling and Mary Ann Allen, and I think that Senator Castro. We've formed a group, and we've been working right now. We've had meetings with the legal team, they've taken notes from a lot of the industry players, meaning the applicants, on how we should fix the law, and we will continue to have those conversations. So we've had policy meetings already, and the legal team that helps draft that the language for a trailer bill has been on those calls to help us get the language right. So we're moving in the right direction. The governor should be commended for listening to the people. We know he's a billionaire and he didn't have to listen, but thank God he did.
It's true. He could have just bought his own country and legalized cannabis there. So at least he didn't do that and is working on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois. And you know what? That's all we can do is speak truth to power and hope somebody hears. But isn't it actually amazing and really sweet when somebody does hear for a change? But that only happens with legislative champions. So thank you, Representative Ford. We'll be talking to you again soon.
All right. Have a good day, everyone. See you in a minute.
Thank you all for attending. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. If you have more questions, please submit them to the medical cannabis community either via our website, our email, or on Facebook, and we'll make sure to include them in our next session. Thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.